Hello everybody and welcome back to another How to Play series video, and today I'm going to be covering the Tier 9 Japanese tech tree battleship, the Izumo. This is a ship that the last time I played her and the last time I did a video for her, I at the time had nothing good to say about the ship. She had a ton of flaws and not many things going for her. However, I believe it was a couple of months ago, I think it was July of this year, Wargaming came around and actually buffed Izumo, and I haven't actually played her until very recently when I was like, should go back and see how she performs now. And I have to say, she has become one of my favorite Tier 9 battleships. This ship now is really, really good, and I would say if I was to rank Tier 9 battleships in order of what I would think are the best ones, if Musashi and Missouri are like really sort of top tier, let's say those are like S tier ranking ships, Izumo very comfortably for me right now be an A tier ship just because of how many good things she's got going for her. So first things first, let me start listing off all of the good parts of the ship, and then I'll sort of talk about the bad parts of the ship. Good things about the ship. Her guns, they are still really, really punchy. She has really high velocity guns, which means that targets within like 12 kilometers, if you get good shots on them, it's going to hurt for sure. Now, of course, high penetration does, of course, have its issues, because if you aim poorly, you are still going to overpen stuff, and that, unfortunately, is going to be the case. But as long as you aim well, you will be rewarded. Second, the battleship right now, her armor is very, very good. First things first, what they've done is they've made the main deck piece 57 millimeters thick. 57 millimeter deck armor means that you're going to be resistant to 203 millimeter high explosive from German heavy cruisers, which is a huge thing. You're going to be able to minimize the amount of HE damage that you're going to take. Furthermore, Izumo's main belt armor as well as the sloped citadel armor that's underneath it combined together means that if you're angled correctly with Izumo, the chances of you taking citadel hits is very, very low. In fact, you're going to be incredibly tanky actually if you angle her correctly, and I'll sort of show you how that works later. Another advantage, and this is sort of a hidden advantage, is take a look at the Izumo superstructure. You'll notice that her superstructure is super ugly still, but it is pretty darn small. So, while for other battleships, especially like Friedrich the Grosse, where, you know, she's got this huge amount of superstructure, she'll take HE pens there, AP pens there, Izumo will take a lot less of those. And so, a lot more of those shells are going to land on that 57 millimeter upper deck armor, and it's going to bounce if it's battleship AP, and if it's like HE, well, it's not going to go through except for like the high penetration Royal Navy battleship HE. So, Izumo has become a very, very tough nut to crack. Before moving on to other things, do pay attention to the salvo. It is nice, and it's going to hit hard. Beautiful. The Izumo's guns are really close together, so when you do have those nice RNG rolls, you do tend to have nice little blocks of shells, and if you can hit with those, it's really going to hurt. Like I also talked about earlier, she has high velocity guns with good penetration. So, if an enemy battleship is trying to turn away, your shells can get there before that battleship re-enters that sort of more of a safe angled zone. Your shells have that good velocity, make sure you use it, right? Okay, so going back to the other things that have improved. Originally, Izumo had this absolutely garbage concealment. Like, you could be spotted from everywhere, right? We used to make a joke that it was because of the ugliness of the main superstructure that like everybody would see you from the moon. And the fact that back in the day you also only had 32 millimeters of armor everywhere meant that HE spammers just started shooting at you as soon as they saw you, and it led to Izumo's dying very, very quickly, and not much you could do about it. But now with that improved deck armor, you're resistant to HE, and your concealment has dropped quite a bit. Fully built for concealment with Concealment Expert in the concealment module, your surface detectability is 12.9. Is that the best you're going to get? Well, no, there are going to be ships that are better, but it is significantly better than what you had before. One final small advantage of the ship is the fact that she doesn't have that standard battleship layout. She has all the guns forward, and at times that can also throw off people's aim as well. So that is like a tiny little thing. Now, does she have her weaknesses? Yes, every ship has weaknesses, and the Izumo does have two sort of major weaknesses. One of them is not the world's best AA armament, so if a CV decides to take a abnormal amount of interest in you, then you're probably still going to die. On top of that, of course, you also have the fact that you have this like all forward gun layout, which for some players is just strange. But I can help you with that, so don't worry about it at all. First things first, how many of you out there are still playing the Izumo going bow in? If you are, you're doing it wrong. The big thing that I want you to remember is that you can use all three of the Izumo's gun turrets. The thing that you have to do is abuse the wonderfully thick side armor that the Izumo has got. And if you can position correctly, you can fire all your guns and at the same time remain relatively safe from enemy return fire. So here's how it works. First things first, take a look at your forward arcs. In order to get all three of your gun turrets to fire, you have to be at 36 degrees. To fire all three of your turrets to the rear when you're kiting away like I'm doing right now in the game, I will be at 38 degrees from the enemy targets. Now, when the enemy decides to shoot back at me, and let's say they're going to be shooting at me at roughly that kind of angle, the amount of effective belt armor I have on the Izumo is incredible. Let me show you how much armor I actually have in both of those situations. If I'm angling with my bow at a 36-degree angle from an enemy target, I have 606 millimeters of effective belt armor. So if an enemy decides to shoot at me, I have 1, an auto bounce check that'll happen. 2, I will have the 606 roughly millimeters of effective armor. If I'm kiting away, I'll have the same thing. I'll have some auto bounce chances. And I'll also then have 578 millimeters of armor. Now, below that main belt armor, I also have a sloped citadel armor. That is at the thinnest 76 millimeters of sloped armor and at the thickest 127 millimeters of sloped armor. Now remember, it is sloped, right? So combine that together with that angled outer belt armor, even if you don't depend on the auto bounce check, which will happen. Even if you don't depend on it, you're still going to be able to negate a lot of battleship armor piercing. But angling, of course, is key. So now you should begin to have a picture of what kind of position that Izumo needs to be in. And take a look at right now, that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm sitting in that kiting away position with my stern pointed towards the enemy, right? And I'm in that place where my guns can be used, but my belt armor is either auto bouncing or it's just simply shattering the enemy shells. So you have to be, and again, you have to be able to get all of your guns out, but you have to be angled enough so that your main belt armor is there, tanking those shots, right? The only ships that you really have to worry about when you're in the Izumo really is going to be Yamato and Musashi, and even then, not as much. You're worried primarily because they can overmatch 32mm pieces of armor on your ship, namely your bow armor and your upper belt armor. But if they overmatch your actual bow, it's still pretty difficult to get into your citadel because behind your bow, you have a very thick 410mm piece of armor as well. And if you're already somewhat angled, even the overmatch is at most going to net the enemy Yamato and Musashi player penetration damage. And they're not really going to be getting into your citadel. So now that you understand this about the Izumo's armor profile, and you understand that you can actually play by using your belt to do most of the tanking, and you can get all of your firepower out, Izumo becomes a much better ship because her firepower has never been something in doubt. In the past, her problem has always been that survivability. This is a ship that in the past that used to get melted by HE, and now she doesn't get melted as quickly. You should, of course, pick certain captain skills to help you out with that, right? So for a 14-point captain, because again, I'm not going to assume that everybody's running around with 19-point captains. For a 14-point captain, which is perfectly reasonable at tier 9, you should have these skills at the very least. Priority target on 1, adrenaline rush on 2, superintendent on 3, concealment expert on 4, and then fire prevention on 4. After that, with the remaining 5 points, if you do end up having a 19-point captain, get things like basics of survivability and expert marksman. Those are skills that are just going to be able to help you out. Moving on, and let's sort of step away from the mechanics aspect of the ship, because I've pretty much, I think, covered all of it. What about positioning overall in terms of the game? Well, regardless, Izumo is still not a battleship, even with all of her tankiness, that you want to be sort of all by yourself, right? Relatively speaking, with Izumo, you still want to kind of be with your own team. You're going to be able to keep up with most of your ships at tier 9-10, as the Izumo is not a slow battleship, so make sure you are able to stick with them. Of course, if you encounter a superior enemy force and your own team starts to go, oh hell no, and they start to turn around and run away, don't be the idiot, right? Don't continue to charge forward and then become the sole target for the entire enemy team to focus you down. You can also turn away and start entering that kiting away position, which, like I mentioned earlier, if you are able to stay in this kind of rearwards kiting position, you're going to be able to resist a lot of incoming enemy fire. If you have the opportunity and you sort of watch this video carefully in terms of my positioning, you'll notice how if I'm going towards the enemy or going away from the enemy, what kind of position I am in, like how am I angled, because that is the key thing to playing the Izumo well. The ability to bring all of your firepower to bear while making yourself such a tough nut to crack that enemy ships would rather shoot someone else. It's true, because if a Izumo is just properly angled, it's really annoying for an enemy ship to deal with, because there's just not many things that can effectively deal with it when it's done properly. I think the only major threats to you as a Izumo player now in terms of enemy battleships would be HE spam from Royal Navy battleships like Conqueror and Lion. Those would be the ships that would now pose the biggest issue, but other than that, most enemy targets you should be able to deal with just through proper angling and, of course, by using your guns and engaging targets, right? Okay, so final things to talk about is statistical performance of the Izumo. My recent 12 solo battles, this is my stat line, right? I have a 75% win rate, 3,000 personal rating, 111,000 damage, and 1.25 frags on average. This, compared to the last time I played the Izumo, and this is when I was grinding through it, back then I was averaging 72k damage a game, and I was really dependent on divisions to carry me. These days, with the ship the way she is, I'm a lot happier with her, being able to play her solo and everything, and doing quite well. Now, for you out there, if you want, I think, Unicum damage, right now with the Izumo, it's probably going to be around 81,000. So if you can average about 81,000 damage a game, you should be in that Unicum range. Obviously, with win rates, I mean, you still need to be in excess of 60% win rate for Unicum stats, but this is a ship that right now is very strong at tier 9. And for me personally, who had a very crappy past experience with the Izumo, for me to come out and say that like this has become one of my favorite tier 9 tech tree battleships is it even shocks me because for me this ship was just one of those things that I never wanted to play again, and now I'm happy to play the ship by myself, because in the past I would never play the ship by myself, right? Now I'm happy to play the ship solo, and I'm happy to play it in divisions of 2 or 3, whichever one. The ship is much better to play today than she was before, and I am so glad that Wargaming went around and buffed her, because for those people out there who are grinding to the Yamato today, the Izumo is no longer that ship that acted like a unwelcome roadblock, shall we say. Today, the Izumo is fantastic to play, and as long as you know how to utilize her strengths, this is a ship that will reward you. And for the entire Japanese battleship line, really starting at tier 5 with the Congo, because that's really where the game really begins, right? I would say the Japanese battleship line is fantastic all the way through now. Like Kongo, Fuso, Nagato, Amagi, Izumo, Yamato. Like all great ships that as long as you play them correctly will perform game in, game out, and you should be able to have fantastic battles with these ships. Alright, so I'm going to try to get off one more nuke, which is going to be against the St. Louis, and then I'm just going to transition us to the battle results screen, because there's not really much damage left, and the game pretty much ends after that. There's like no more real action. The enemy team is pretty much down to the last ships anyways. The reason why is because I really have to wrap this video up. I'm going to the airport to be hopping on a flight, going to the Anchors Away Anaheim event this weekend. So for people in that area who are coming out to the event, make sure to come and say hi. I'm probably going to be in a t-shirt that is going to have my name on the back of it or something like that, so you should be able to find me. You know, come and say hi. It'd be awesome to meet up with you and have a chat about whatever else you really want. Final results for this particular battle, there we go, 206,421 damage, 5 Citadel hits, 4 enemy ships sunk, got 10,320 experience, Confederate, 4 goal hull, high caliber. So it was a very solid battle all the way around there. And then if you take a look at the team score for base experience, I was top of the team here, 2,596 base experience. And yeah, I mean, at the end, it was just chasing destroyers around. I did get sunk by the enemy Benson, but that's all right, doesn't really matter. That's the damage that I was able to get on the enemy ships, and yeah, good amounts of damage all around. And finally, credit total 320,896 net credits earned, and without a premium would have been 147,000. Anyways, folks, I hope you enjoyed this how to play video. Take care of yourselves. Have a good one. I'm going to render this, get this uploaded, and I'll talk to all of you again when I get back from Anaheim.